Should Dead by Daylight have a ranked and unranked mode? I recently did a poll on this and the majority of you voted yes. However, the interesting thing is that based on the comments of the poll, whether voting yes or no, the motive for the vote was largely the same, which is that most players want less sweaty matches. Some of you believe having a ranked and unranked mode will help filter the more sweaty players into the ranked matches, whereas those of you who voted no are afraid that adding a ranked mode to the game would lead to even more sweaty game balancing, plus sweaty players invading and taking advantage of the more casual playlist. Add to that BHVR's recent updates trimming more casual and fun aspects out of the game in favor of better balancing, maybe it's time to take a serious look at this idea. And before we go any further, BHVR adding a ranked and unranked mode to the game is a very real possibility because they have already asked multiple questions specifically about it in their community questionnaires. So at the very least, we know it is something they're considering to try to mitigate the negative aspects of SBMM being added to the game. The biggest of which is the psychological aspect of making players think they need to bring the best loadouts every time just to have a good match, leading to a lot of stressful matches and hard-locked metas. So in this video, we're going to discuss a few aspects of this ranked and unranked idea, the best way to implement it if it was added into the game, what the overall effect would be if it was implemented, and other alternative directions BHVR could go instead of adding it to the game. Let's start with the best way to implement it if BHVR is determined to make this a reality. For starters, there would need to be a distinct reason to queue into either playlist. Ranked would need to be the definitive competitive DBD experience, whereas unranked would need to be more casual or open like current DBD. Now, to be clear, there should be no exclusive rewards to playing either playlist. DBD should be the game you want to play on any given day. One day you might feel competitive, and the next day you might prefer a more chill experience. So rewards should stay general, and you should never feel pressured to play in a way you don't enjoy. The only exclusive reward of a ranked playlist should be the player's rank, a real determination of a player's skill moving up ranked brackets in a competitive environment, and then I suppose bragging rights if you're feeling extra cringe. Now, there is no way BHVR can keep two completely different versions of DBD updated, balanced, etc. So the difference between the modes would need to be as effective as possible while remaining practical. Introducing completely different powers and things like that are not realistic. The first thing that they would need to do is introduce a static map pool for the ranked playlist. Find something like the 10 most balanced maps in the game, keep a static layout of those maps to reduce RNG, and adjust them from time to time. Offerings would also have to be removed for obvious reasons. They give the player way too much pre-game advantage, whereas in a more casual playlist, they still offer variety and unique builds. For instance, getting rid of map offerings completely kills off jump scare Myers. So this is where simple differences can enhance the ranked playlist while protecting the casual playlist from the boredom of competitive balancing. Ideally, by doing this, loop design will eventually get to a place where bloodlust can be removed altogether as well. Moving on, the ranked playlist would need limited items and add-ons. Removing items and add-ons altogether is a bridge too far in my opinion. However, ultra rares and rares should be banned in a competitive playlist. It is a bit awkward because add-ons are very inconsistent. Some killers rely on brown add-ons and some rely on more rare add-ons, but in general this would be the more realistic approach until add-ons were better balanced. Another common theme in competitive settings are perk regulation. There are two sides to perk regulation. The first is a straight ban of perks that are considered too OP. I disagree with this. No perks should be banned. If a ranked playlist is showing that certain perks are extremely oppressive, that's a separate issue. I'd rather the perk got adjusted rather than restrict gameplay and adding a bunch of new problems. Getting actual good data on perk performance would hopefully allow the devs to make better balancing choices too. The second part of perk regulation is perk duplication, meaning survivors aren't allowed to run the same perks as each other, or sometimes they are limited to how many times a certain perk can be reused. And to be honest, I'm against this as well. It's a ranked playlist, not a tournament. This concept gets a bit into a rabbit hole of causing more issues than it actually solves, especially when it comes to pre-game lobbies, solo queue versus survive with friends, and things like that. Again, this will give better data to BHVR to hopefully make more informed, balanced decisions. Okay, let's move on to how a ranked playlist would evaluate player skill. Skill-based matchmaking right now pretty much only looks at kills and escapes. All nuance and team aspects get thrown straight out the window. So obviously this will not be a measurement of true player skill. The old emblem system used to award pips based on individual player performance, and this is better than SBMM's lazy doomsday evaluation, but it's still flawed for one major reason. That is, DBD is a team game if you play Survivor, so you need to be evaluated as a team. Both the emblem system and SBMM punish a survivor for getting tunneled out of a match. Even if the killer chases a survivor for 5 generators and all 3 of their teammates escape, that one survivor still loses when they die. That alone completely destroys any credible aspect that rank means anything. So Behavior would have to develop a rank system that rewards survivors as a team. Killer, on the other hand, is a bit complicated as well, because you can win a match with 0 hooks and lose a match with 8 hooks. So killers do need to be adequately rewarded for playing well too. Failure to reward skill accurately on either side will destroy any ranked mode immediately. It would also be important to separate specific killer rank. A top ranked nurse is different than a top ranked Sadako. The most rewarding thing to any killer player is going to be proving that they are the best with a certain killer. If there's a universal rank for the killer role, it will be much less interesting because it's going to be instantly assumed every top ranked killer just got there using a top tier killer. Another thing Behavior would need to seriously consider is how they would deal with the cheaters in a ranked mode specifically. They would need some form of verification to play ranked. A less invasive system could require that an account needs 100 hours played and is older than 30 days. That means that cheaters would need to make an account and play on it without getting banned for at least 100 hours over the span of a month. It wouldn't completely remove the problem, but it would significantly help. To really succeed with reducing cheating, specifically subtle cheating, they would need to invest in a match replay feature, which is something they have gone on record saying they will most likely never do, but they need to reevaluate that stance if a ranked mode is something they're serious about adding to the game. Alright, now with there being a ranked mode, what would that mean for the unranked mode, or casual mode, quick play mode, whatever you would want it to be called? Well, it still has to be somewhat competitive. Otherwise, it will just turn into PTB level trash, pointless gameplay. If you want a completely casual experience, you can always play in a private kill your friends lobby. Most players would agree that the base mode of DBD should still be competitive, just not to the level where it starts to suck the fun out of the game like SBMM. And the best route to achieve the right balance would be an expanded emblem system because it just encourages healthy gameplay more than anything else. That said, the most realistic outcome would unfortunately be that SBMM still rolled the unranked playlist. Also, just to be clear, the grade system would still be universal between both the ranked and unranked mode. Assuming these systems were now implemented, what would the pros and cons be of adding such an enormous addition to the game? The first thing that comes to my mind is the queue times. Would they be noticeably impacted? It would be one thing to have 2 game modes, but a ranked mode divides players up much more strictly than the somewhat loose SBMM system that DBD uses now. So if you have multiple players sitting in matchmaking limbo in a ranked playlist waiting for a perfectly balanced match, it means less players are going to be in the unranked mode's matchmaking. Yet that doesn't necessarily mean the unranked mode would have slower matchmaking. It would just mean that the unranked mode would have less consistent matchmaking when it comes to player skill, which is okay. It kind of means the ranked playlist would be doing its job of chilling out the sweat levels in the unranked mode. Pretty much any game with a ranked playlist has slower matchmaking, especially at higher ranks where the player pools are much smaller, and it's never really seemed to be that much of a deal breaker for players. I also mentioned before that a ranked playlist would give the devs better data for balancing, which is good, but also potentially bad because it means that general balance changes will spill over into the unranked DBD. Game system overhauls like the endgame Mori finisher, perk reworks, etc. can't be contained to only a ranked playlist, so there is the possibility of DBD losing more fun perks and mechanics as a result, but that seems to be destined to happen anyway unless they turn DBD into a heist game. Ideally, the slices of fun removed from the game will be outweighed by the more filtered and chill matchmaking, but it's hard to know for sure. It goes without saying that current DBD definitely has two groups of players occupying the same space: super competitive players and players more focused on having a chill experience. Both groups want to win, both groups want to have fun, but they accomplish those goals in much different ways, so it does make some sense to split them into different game modes that are tailored to those playstyles. And as I said before, you can be competitive one day and chill the next, so it would be nice to filter your own experience to some degree. Of course, players will still go into the unranked mode with nuclear builds and obliterate, but there would be two important differences. One, it would be kinda cringe, and two, it would happen much less often than it does right now. One big negative aspect out of all of this would be the endless ocean of confusing ranks in DBD. Players would have their devotion level, their grade, their individual character prestige levels, and their actual rank in the ranked playlist. Again, this is more or less on behavior for playing around with so many different rank systems that prioritize time played over actual skill. At some point, they might need to just bite the bullet and show the truth and stop making potatoes think they're the greatest of all time. Alright, so if a ranked unranked mode could be implemented perfectly, it could be an okay system, which is kind of a scary equation. So what's the alternative? Well, the most obvious thing that comes to my mind is an entirely new game mode. DBD has had the same objective and largely the same exact gameplay loop for 6 years. Instead of pouring all of these resources into two modes that are basically the same thing, it might be way healthier to just invest into something completely new and fresh. 2v8 is the most common game mode asked for, but unfortunately DBD's code is basically a house of cards. They couldn't even get Nemesis to work with 3 zombies, so the idea of having such a grand game mode would probably be impossible until DBD 2 comes out. There's also licensing issues. Behavior can run into legal issues having a game mode where Michael Myers is getting pulled apart by Pinhead's chains, for instance. But there's still a lot of different modes they could implement. They could even swap them out monthly like smaller scale arcade modes. Things like hide and seek mode, Among Us, musical lockers. The sky's really the limit creatively. In the grand scheme of things, this is the route that I believe would be much more intelligent in the long term over a ranked and unranked mode. In the end, this all pretty much boils down to less sweaty and new fresh gameplay being sought after by the DBD community. The big question is, what route do we take to get there? Let me know what you all think, and as always, thanks so much for watching and have a good one.